Hello, and welcome to episode 6, part 2 of 2 with Ed Moores. As you can see, I am in this lovely wooded setting, kind of as a continuation of my little nomadic tour / lifestyle. I'm staying with my sister up in Woodford, and she's luckily just in the kind of touching foot of Epping Forest. So I've got this amazing space to kind of explore and to be in. So yeah, this is where this intro is coming to you from. And someone's put a lovely den behind me, which is beautiful. So yeah, this could be the first of a few kind of wild podcasts, if you like, because as it happens, as I kind of speak to you now, I've applied for an Irish passport, and I am going to be doing this kind of maybe like a touring podcast, you might say. So I'm going to be getting on my bike, heading down to the kind of southern roots of Portugal, and then from there I'm going to be sort of starting a kind of journey, journey. I'm not quite sure where I'm going to go. I'm not quite sure where it's going to take me, but it's going to be documented, and it's going to be hopefully punctuated by meeting some really interesting people, and some people along the way. So yeah, this could be the first of a many kind of wild intros. So yeah, keep your ears and eyes peeled out for that. So yeah, that's quite an exciting future thing. This week was quite an interesting week, really. It was I found myself for the first time taking my diary out, which was quite strange, considering this lockdown period we've had of not planning or not necessarily meeting anybody, and just all of a sudden it just came upon that it was like, oh, okay, right, we can actually do that kind of thing now. So things are weirdly going back into kind of normal, which is, well, I don't know, it depends how you feel about the word normal, but yeah, I don't know, I quite preferred the kind of free, not quite knowing what's going to happen, rather than the kind of the planning that's going ahead. But alas, you've got to go with the flow, I suppose. So this is part 2 with Ed. Hope you enjoyed part 1. Again, he's just he's a very, very, got a very logical mind, a very, very smart mind. And yeah, we in this part 2 we drift and talk about because him and Jackie often go to TED Talks. So we talk about his experiences with them. We talk about this concept of marginal gains, which is quite fascinating. And we also talk a little bit about data and privacy and China's role in that, which I'm pretty sure you heard the trailer, so I won't spoil any kind of other bits. And also there's a bit about Bangernomics, which again is quite a beautiful concept. So yeah, I hope you enjoy part 2 with Ed. And yeah, I hope life's treating you well, and life's treating you kindly, and enjoy the conversation. Thank you very much. Sorry for that little interlude. We just went on a walk, and Storm Kira came.
Oh my good God! So that was something. That was a
Storm Kira really came. I mean,
so it's hilarious, right? So we came back in, absolutely drenched and literally sodden down to the boxes, and now we look outside and I don't see a single drop of rain. Honestly, it's like fate knew that we're like, you know what, we're going to get some fresh air, try to be good humans and go on a little walk.
Sorry, what do you want? Oh, go for it.
The interlude. Let's do it. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Da, da, da. And we're back live on air with Ed and Ryan. Where were we? Storm Kira.
Storm Kira, yeah. So, as I say, we stepped outside for a night to probably good humans, go for a little Sunday afternoon walk, stretch our legs, get the blood flowing, and within 10 minutes, it was torrential. Continued our walk, though, like good humans. But yeah.
All
very, very much.
all the clothes now are back in the dryer, or that were being worn, because you have to get home hopefully dry, semi-dry.
Well, provided the flight's still on, so
exactly
continuously
right.
checking the phone. I know there's been a few flights cancelled today, so fingers crossed.
Yeah, you go to a lot of TEDx's, don't you?
Yeah, so
You
I've
do a
been
lot of TEDxy things.
I've been to 3 TEDx events and 1 TEDx workshop. Now, the TEDx workshop we went to was in October last year. Now, this is really interesting. So, what they did, so we've only been to the Newcastle ones, but the TEDx Newcastle was on a Saturday, and on the Friday they decided to have a workshop. So they had 4 different workshops all going on at the same time, like 3 or 4 hours during the day on a Friday. We happened to have the day off, which is great, so we were able to attend. And they had one that was on, one was on Don't Forget How to Play, Creativity in Adults.
Oh, that's highly,
Yeah,
okay.
there was one that was on emotional intelligence.
Fabulous.
There was one on design thinking. And there was one that was on communication and technology. So all really pertinent, really interesting topics.
Mm-hmm.
Jack went to the emotional intelligence one, and I went to the design thinking one. Mine was hosted by Accenture, which is like a really big multinational technology firm that's basically looking at how to bring emerging technologies into everyday life and sort of benefit people in a whole host of different ways. One of the things I recently worked on was these glasses that people would wear at the theatre. And usually, if you're hard of hearing and you want to enjoy the theatre, you have to look to the left or right to see the subtitles, to read what's going on. You miss what's going on in the middle of the screen. So they provided these to a few of the theatres in the UK now, where people can wear the glasses and the subtitles show up in augmented reality below the screen on their vision.
Goodness me.
So they can enjoy the show and read what's going on as well at the same time, which is great.
They've got quite a few of these. I remember you saying before about this company and their innovations.
Yeah. So another thing that we saw. So both these things were shown in before the actual TEDx event, and they showed another one of JFK. So JFK had written obviously his speech that he was going to perform before he was assassinated, and obviously the speech he never got to read. And they had taken over 14,000 extracts of his voice, because he had a very unique way of speaking to JFK.
Right.
And they were able to build up this speech to be spoken in the exact way that he would have spoken it, using snippets of his voice from his previous speeches and recordings.
Wow.
And it was, honestly, you put the headphones on and it sounded like exactly how he would have said this speech. The same inflections, the same tone, the same spacing between the words.
Wow.
It was phenomenally done, which was really, really impressive. They've done something recently, which we saw this October just gone, which was about athletes. So instead of just performance tracking, with regards to, I did this distance in this time on this day, people were logging a emotional report on how they felt it went, how they felt beforehand, how they felt afterwards.
Brilliant.
So if, for example, someone said they were having a down day, went for a run, and their time was less than it usually would be, that goes into filter into a report to not only monitor their vitals, but monitor how they were feeling and their emotional state, because that can have a really big impact on athletes' performance.
Oh, wow.
So it was really interesting, and they were using it for the Olympic swim team.
Really?
To see if it can actually improve their results, if they know when and how and what could impact their training.
It's amazing the lengths that these kind of teams behind the athlete or the person or whatever go to try and get them to enhance their performance, isn't it?
Absolutely. So do you know about there was a coach called Brailsford a few years back for the British cycling team. Now, the British cycling team never used to be anything much, never used to win any awards, would finish like 7th or 8th pretty consistently and never really got much attention. I think it was David Brailsford, don't correct me on that if I'm wrong. And he introduced this theory of marginal gains. Now, what he did was he said, right, let's forget about the end result. We're not winning now anyway, so let's not focus on winning. But what we should do is we should focus on each tiny element of what could improve our game and what we could do to improve it 1%. So he looked at, for example, like the lycra that they were wearing when they were cycling, looking at the shoes they were wearing, looking at the helmet shape, looking at the time of day they trained, looking at the meals they were having beforehand, all the tiny little components that made up the overall performance of the team, and how can we improve each of these areas by just 1%.
Wow.
So one of the ways we learn about this is there's a book called Atomic Habits, and the author talks about this in there as well, and shows that if you can improve each element of something overall by 1%, it'll make significant impacts through marginal gains. So if you improve 100 things 1%, you're going to improve 100% technically.
Right.
And then the British cycling team went on to actually be like champion winners. They won the Tour de France 3 times in a row after that, just through marginal gains.
Is this the Chris Hoy? Chris Hoy? Wiggins. Is this a recent thing, or is this like
this is the 2000s? So 2000
so it could be Bradley Wiggins and that, like Chris Hoy, because actually thinking about it over the course of the time that I've known the English cycling team, like there was like a period of
Bradley
time.
Wiggins. Yeah, that's the guy. Yeah, so David Brailsford was the coach.
Stuff. Really?
Yeah, he was the coach during this time, David Brailsford. And looking at all these marginal gains is what took them to victory.
Because literally they came out of nowhere. They were just like, oh, okay, so now we're in gold in cycling. I was like, all right, okay. Right,
Yeah,
okay.
and it's because of marginal gains. Looking at each, so there's a phrase that you can look at called times G, so TIMESG, which is tiny improvements multiplied equals significant gains. Love an acronym. Love an acronym.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you look at all the tiny improvements you can make, add it all together, make significant gains. Which is a really interesting way of looking at anything, really.
Yeah, right.
So looking at, I don't know, say for example, you wanted to get up a little bit earlier every morning. You look at not the end result of wanting to get up a little bit earlier, but you look at all the things that could make that a little bit easier. So putting out your clothes in the night time is a 1%. Making sure that your coffee is already in the pot by the time you go to bed, that's another 1%. And you add all these little things together to make the overall end result easier for you to achieve.
And you could even stretch that to like making your before bedtime really relaxing, and like so just sort of like improving your sleep to then wake up ready charged.
Exactly,
you know
yeah.
what I mean? Like,
So
dim the lighting, like, you know.
turn off the TV an extra 5 minutes earlier, have 5 minutes still in the living room without the TV on, all this white light. So how you can improve everything a tiny little bit can make the end result a lot easier without focusing on the result. So focus on the journey rather than the destination.
Yeah, Savas has given me some wise information. Like so for example, he's like, I've had this like idea of like setting up a company of some sort, and I get like wrapped up in this whirl of like oh, I could do that, okay, do that, and then da-da-da. And Sav like stripped it back and was like, look, just like break it down. So start from if you actually had the thing you were after. So, you know, just say it was, I want to make a cheese sandwich, yeah, and you've got nothing of the sort in the house. So it's like, okay, scale back from and what are the steps you need to go to get to that cheese sandwich? So it's like, okay, so I do that. I said before that it'd be like getting the knife and then the bread, and then you like scale it back to literally where you are now. And then if you've got a visual representation of this is what I can do, and then you're going along and like ticking, you know, being like, okay, so I've done that, I've gone to the shop, I've chosen the bread, I've got the knife, I've got, you know, it gives you an easier breakdown of like how to get there, basically.
Yeah, well, you'd never eat an elephant all at once.
Oh, right.
You take
yeah,
it bite by bite.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
And there's also, so I remember I was speaking to a coach of mine not long ago, like a professional coach, and he was saying, yeah, so I've got this mentor at work that's a phenomenal coach, and he coaches me through quite a lot of things that come to like professional sense. He's absolutely fantastic. And one of the things that he said, he says, right, you need to, so you've got a process you need to follow. You need to make sure this project is delivered. And he said, if you woke up tomorrow and what you're trying to achieve was done, what would need to happen overnight for it to be achieved?
All right.
And that is essentially the same as breaking it down, but it put it in a really simple term, like, well, that would need to happen, and that would need to happen, and that would need to happen. He's like, right, make a list and go. It's a really interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the mammoth overall task, you're going to get stuck in the whirlwind. You're going to get caught up in the hows, the whats, the wheres, the whys. But if you try and break it down to the granular level, to the 1%, it makes life a lot more manageable.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, too right. What was the you said you saw one TED talk and it was about education.
So the theme of the actual TED event itself was education in the 21st century, which is a really interesting topic because if you look at the way that education is delivered within the UK, it hasn't changed a whole lot in the grand scheme of things in the past sort of 20, 30, 40, 50 years or so.
60, 70, 80, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
Industrial Revolution days, isn't it, man? It's not...
yeah, children have seen and not heard.
Literally.
Which is really interesting because you look at the way the world is now, and even in our lifetime, in the past sort of 15, 20 years, things are not the same. Things are accelerating in the same pace as the Industrial Revolution. Because
do you know? Just quickly, I just remembered a time when I was a little kid, and we were on the bus somewhere with my uncle, and this lady said to me, she was like, because I was kicking the can down the stairs, I've been pretty antisocial, annoying, whatever, and she looked at me and she was like, "Little children should be seen and not heard." And I was like, all right, okay. It's about 8 or something. And then David said, "Ryan, say goodbye to the old lady." And I went, I didn't say it, obviously, you know.
Yeah, of course.
Anyway,
but
sorry.
not heard.
Carry
So yes, I went to a TEDx talk. It would have been last year now, and the whole theme of everything was about education. And they had the head professor of education of Newcastle University there. And Newcastle University is a school that leads a PGCE, and he sort of leads that faculty. And some of his theories are really, really interesting, and they received a lot of objection from a lot of mainstream boards because he said in the modern day world, if any person goes out into a walk of life, goes into a job, goes into anything, they're going to have the resources available to them that are available to them. So, for example, you could go out to a cross-section of the UK now and 80% of people would have access to Google within 30 seconds.
Right.
It's in the pocket.
Yeah.
They're by a computer. They're in a library. There's a way of getting access to all this information. We are in what they call the information age, and we have ready access to it. Why not use that? So he was saying that it's unfair to expect kids to memorize, discern, and understand processes that they'd never really need to, because they'd have it at their fingertips if they needed it. So one thing that he did, he went into these classrooms in Gateshead and funded loads of extra computers going in, kids having iPads, all this wonderful stuff. And he said, right, let's do a student-led lesson on research and understanding. So he went into this classroom of, I think they were like 7 or 8 year old, the 7s and 8s. He said, right, I want you to go out and give me a presentation in 45 minutes time, a 10-minute presentation about sedimentary rock formations. And these kids came out with these presentations of learnings that were years ahead of what the curriculum would have taught them. So it was what year 11s, year 12s, year 13s were learning about sedimentary rock formations. Yeah, because they had the grasp of the internet at their fingertips. They were able to pull the information out of it that they thought they needed to be able to present on it. And as we know, if you learn something and then teach somebody else, it solidifies your understanding of the concept anyway. Yeah, right. So allowing these kids to be free reign, not individually, but they were in small groups of about 4 or 5 to go out on the computers and understand what they could understand from the internet. They were able to actually get a higher level of understanding than what they would have if they were just taught from the basic curriculum, which is really interesting. There was another study this gentleman did about kids understanding computers. So as we know, as a digital native, you've grown up with computers the majority of your life, especially kids who were born shortly after us. They probably don't know life without a computer of some description.
Yeah, right.
They pick up technology insanely fast. My friend has a 2-year-old who can type on a tablet faster than he can write.
Jesus.
I know it's insane. And he took these computers over to rural parts of India where they'd never really seen one, never really played with one, and they put a kind of like a hole in the wall, like an ATM style computer into the wall, and they had all these kids at it. They let these kids just play around with it and say, right, just figure out how to use this thing. And within 48 hours, these kids were completely adapt to it. They understood how to play with it, how to install stuff, how to uninstall stuff, how to hack it, go on the internet and do everything just in a collective learning group. So it was a group of about 20 kids.
I like that collective learning group.
A collective learning group that's student led and just allowed to play and make mistakes. And because ultimately there's very little you can do with a computer these days that you can't reverse. And they were just allowed to play and go and Just try to understand it. And they did. And it just goes to show that we've always known that student-led education a lot of the time can be more fruitful for the person learning, because they're learning it for themselves. Being told something. So it kind of comes down to coaching as well in the same way. So if someone tells you to do something, it's going to go in, you'll take it in, you'll do it, but you might not learn the lessons behind it. But if someone coaches out of you to make you understand it and why you need to do it, you're going to understand it better and have a better grounding of it within yourself. And it kind of works the same for mainstream education. If you have to find out this information, you understand why it makes sense, and it makes sense to you in your relatable head, then you're going to have a better grasp of the concept.
Yeah, totally.
So that's that sort of theory he was going down. He's looking to just bring more student-led, technology-based, observed education into schools.
And yeah, I think it's something that you can't deny is already happening. The fact that computers are everything, like they're everywhere. Like there's like someone said to me the other day that that data has overtaken oil as the biggest commodity on this planet.
100%.
Which is like, oh?
So, yeah. So, do you know about the Cambridge Analytica scandal?
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, so scary stuff over in America. And if you actually look at how the most recent election campaign in the UK has gone, and you look at the marketing campaigns, and you look at how it's all been released to the public, I can see very strong trends in what happened there as to what's happened over here.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Interesting, right? So I work for a tech firm in the UK, and I've learned a lot about data and what we can see and bloody terms and conditions, man. So interesting, right? So in the firm that I work for, if someone uses our software and they're doing all the bits and bobs, and then they go onto a competitor's website, looking at their software or looking at their program or whatever, we can be notified of that. We can find through their cookies, because we're allowed to track cookies, to see if they've been on a competitor's website. Then that can trigger a marketing campaign to that person to try and make them stay with us, try to make them more loyal.
Yeah.
We can find out. So in another piece of software that I'm familiar with, when they're using it, the company can physically rewind their screen and see exactly where their mouse went, exactly what clicks they did. And so when they're calling tech support and saying, oh, I'm having a problem doing X, Y, and Z, they can physically see the customer's screen of what they were doing to get to that point and why they experienced that issue. It's really big brother, but the worst thing is we agree to it. All the terms and conditions, all the cookies, absolutely everything we do, we agree to it on a daily basis.
Do you know, there's a kid who still goes to the school I used to work at, and hopefully one day I'm going to get him on the podcast if he'll agree to do it. But he reads the terms and conditions of everything he ever done, everything he ever purchased, everything he ever, he goes through it and reads it, and he waged a complete war against Google. Like, so he's got an amazing thing whereby if people use the term Google as a verb, he will stop them immediately and go, it's not just what are you doing? No, why Google? Why not some other search engine? Like, he will stop them in their tracks and be like, and for reasons that they're just like, your kind of privacy is non-existent really. If you go through there and the algorithms they've got on you and how it all formulates, and yeah. So
everyone's always got a theory that their phone is listening to them. That you talk about something to a friend and then it starts popping up with adverts for that thing. Now, have you seen, it's called The Big Data Conspiracy or something on Netflix. It's really, really interesting. It's saying it's not listening to you, just people are really predictable.
Oh yeah, right.
Like we've got so much data on the world that if you search this, then you're quite likely to search this coming up next. Yeah. We tend to ignore ads that aren't relevant to us and it isn't stuff we're talking about or interested in. So they might get it wrong and we just ignore it. But then when it is that thing that we've been talking about, because we tend to follow patterns, we're creatures of habit as humans, that we're like, damn, I was just talking about that and now I'm being advertised for it. Yeah. And it's all very much just because we are creatures of habit. And you know what, people are like people in certain area, certain age group. So for example, Google will know automatically really, really quickly what age I am, where I live, where I tend to hang out, what establishments I go to, what food So if you use Google Pay on your phone, where you shop, it tracks where you go, how you drive, all that sort of stuff. Now, if it can know that about me, it can know about that about other people in my demographic that do the same things. It'll know what they tend to search at certain times a day after searching certain things. And that's going to be a massive data set. And if they get it right, 30% of the time, people have been at least that 30% of people have been advertised to in the right way, and they've got the thing they were looking for straight away. Now, we're quite aware of this, like you and I and people that we speak to tend to be quite aware of big data. And there are, so if you consider yourself of average intelligence, then 50% of the world are less intelligent than you are. And people will be like, oh, yeah, great, I do need that spray bottle that's just been advertised. Great, happy days.
Yeah.
And it's kind of endorsing it because it's like, oh, yeah, great, they're getting advertising revenue off that and someone's bought that and it's technically working. I think it's become more aware of it, or certain people become more aware of it. It kind of seems a bit more like hopefully it'll go away, but ultimately I don't think it will.
No way, man. I can just imagine George Orwell sitting in his grave going, I fucking told you. I told you.
So it recently got banned in the I actually did a really I had to I say interesting. I had to read a really long, interesting piece of legislation on data security and facial recognition. So there was a study done. Not a study, but there was in China, for example, in every lamppost they have facial recognition software, and they can pick up who you are. And that's one of the reasons there was this massive riots in Hong Kong that happened recently. China said, no, we don't have that technology in Hong Kong. They ripped down a lamppost, and lo and behold, they had that technology. Now, one of the things they were doing in China in certain areas was, obviously, you on Facebook or whatever social media, you allow them to recognize your face, to tag you in photos, because that's nice and innocent and makes it nice and easy for you.
I didn't think about that, right? Yeah.
And then you're walking down the street, because in China they have all these back doors from all the software. You're walking down the street, they know what kind of things you've been searching, and the billboards you walk past, from the facial recognition in the lamppost, advertise the things that you'd be seeing on your phone advertising to you.
Really?
Mm-hmm. They'll recognize who you are, recognize your data set, recognize what you're interested in, and advertise you as you're walking down the street, which is
Bloody
insane.
hell.
So it's now illegal in the
next
UK.
Level. Oh, is it right?
It's illegal in the UK as of like 6 months ago, like only fairly recently. They're now no longer to do facial recognition in public spaces.
Am I shocked? Am I stunned? It's funny. Do you know what? It doesn't surprise me. Wow, that is something. You also, I can remember you telling me a story about your dad or someone you know doing something.
In China.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so as I said earlier, I lived in like a expat complex, and one of my friend's dad was he worked in the German embassy in Shanghai. And we got an assignment to go and research different governmental structures and in different countries. And this German kid, was given the task of going and exploring like communism in China and understanding Chinese government. Now in China, all the internet is monitored. If you're watching TV and you're watching an international news channel and there's a bad story about China, your power gets turned off. When the story's finished, power comes back on magically.
What?
Wonder how that works. Guy in the security room just flipping some switches.
Yeah, right.
So he does some Googling about, he does some internet searching about, the state of government in China. And his internet just suddenly shuts off. And then 2 days later, he gets a knock at the door, and these two Chinese government officials come in asking, why were you researching about the state of government in China? You work for the embassy, and for German embassy. Why would you be researching that? Obviously, he explains it was just his kid. But it goes to show that Big Brother's always watching.
Literally, Big Brother was watching it.
Now, China's kind of another story when it comes to that sort of thing. The government has a lot of control over what is and what isn't censored and what they monitor. And I know that the data laws technically are better in the UK, but whether that's all followed and adhered to, we have to wait and see. But
yeah,
that's where there's big concerns over some of the Chinese brands like Huawei and things like that, and Oppo and these other phone brands, all produced in China, being shipped over here and being used as like mainstream phones. Because what backdoor stuff are they doing? We just don't know. Right. What are they adhering to? What are they feeding back to China? If data is now the most expensive commodity in the world,
it blows my mind. Just even that's a thing. Like, Reese told me that like a couple of weeks ago, or whenever he was here, and I was just like, whoa, okay, that's turned things on its head.
Like for me, yeah, oil is the reason we have all this. You know, it's the lubrication, and for something to overtake that as a commodity, it for me is like wow, like
Not only that, but something that's infinite. So oil, there's a finite amount of. Anything else in the world, there's a finite amount of that around. But data is infinite. You could collect an infinite amount of data sources on an infinite number of scenarios and just store it and sell it. So really interesting. A friend I used to work with, a guy called Rob, he was anal about his data being sold. He just didn't like it, and I get it. So what he did was he had his own server, so it was at robmail.net or something, and for every account he set up online, he did like Barclays at robmail.net, Vodafone at robmail.net, and for every one he signed up for a different email address, and he would watch and see what spam he got. And all he would ever use the individual email address for was to sign up for that service. And he was really interested to see where his data went after signing up to different services. Now, banks are really good. Banks don't sell you data. Phone companies are pretty terrible. They do sell you data. Internet companies, same sort of thing. And he was just really interested to see that after transactions, where it would go and what spam you would get. As you'd expect, smaller businesses or businesses that are on the ropes going out of business tend to sell you data. Other businesses don't. This was a few years back, so it might not be the same now, but it was really interesting at the time. He was showing me his Vodafone one or EE or whatever it was, and all the spam he got through. And he's like, I've only ever used this email address to sign up for a phone contract. Really interesting.
I've been getting spat like letters through the door from like various things. I'm pretty sure I didn't really sign up for that, or just like an email. So it definitely is a minefield of your privacy. It's a bit like your parents kind of like taking down your door when you're a teenager.
Yeah, to some degree.
You know what I mean? It's like just that level of curtain of like, you know, this is now my time is
It's gone.
in some cases completely gone. Yeah.
So a couple of stories actually I've got about this. So a friend of mine, dear friend of mine, Ian, he doesn't always acquire software in the most legitimate of means, one could say. And he
Ian's not his Christian name, by the way. It's
Yeah.
Jeffrey.
Anyway, so Jeff down the pub doesn't always acquire software in the most legitimate of means, and he downloaded a bit of software, was using it, all fine, not a problem, and then 48 hours later he gets a email saying, I've got pictures of you naked, I'm going to leak them to your Facebook if you don't give me £2,000. And he replies going, yeah, whatever, like spam, like, yeah, go ahead. And they sent him a video of himself getting changed in his bedroom through the webcam of his laptop.
Whoa.
Obviously, they'd embedded something in the software that he downloaded, and he then had a video.
Jesus.
Now, he was ballsy as he is, excuse the pun. He was like, yeah, go ahead, I've got nothing to be ashamed of.
And on the high.
Go ahead, upload it to the world. And they just said touche and left them alone. But imagine how many vulnerable girls out there that would cough up that £500 or whatever to make sure that they don't have that leaked to the internet of them getting changed in their bedroom.
God, it's just such a malicious thing to do to prey on someone's insecurity of privacy and being naked and you know.
Yeah, scary thing.
Yeah.
Another story kind of on the flip side with regards to insecurities and stuff like that. So Facebook, as you might know, if you upload any image to Facebook, you no longer have the intellectual property rights to that image. It now belongs to Facebook. Now, there was a story, I believe it was early 2000, like just not long after Facebook was sort of in its like maturity, where a girl put on an image of herself just on Facebook, like you would, and Facebook were working with Virgin Atlantic Australia to have an ad campaign. And this ad campaign used this image of this girl that was sold via Facebook, about this lonely girl who wanted to go on holiday to Australia, and she only found out about it, this advert campaign, when she saw it on TV, with her image of Virgin Atlantic Australia trying to sell this story of this lonely girl who wanted to go and explore the world. And it's just scary that
Yeah,
they don't have to
right.
ask permission. Well, they do when you sign the terms and conditions. They ask permission, but as we all know, blindly tick. And so it's a scary thought to think that even if you think that you're being like, you turn on all your privacy settings on Facebook like they recommend you to do, and you put all these things, these safeguards in place to make sure that you don't sort of leak out information that you don't want to, but actually the entity itself can sometimes be the biggest culprit.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely something to consider when you do, you know, click that terms and condition button, or, you know, share out your information and look after it. Do you want to, before we stop, do you want to talk a little bit about Bangernomics? Because that's just that had me going a little bit, and it's just fabulous.
Yeah, so it's called Bangernomics.
Sorry, Bangernomics.
Bangernomics. So it's a book that originally came out in 1993. He's just recently done a revamped version of it recently. And what the whole thought behind Bangernomics is, you have thousands of people every year. So the average person has a car for 3 years in the UK and tends to do it through finance and tends to spend anywhere between 150 and 300 pounds a month on a car. Now, the thought behind Bangernomics is it is much more cost effective and essentially economical to purchase a car that costs no more than 10% of your yearly salary. So if you earn 20 grand, it's a car that costs you 2 grand, and you run that car into the ground. So you buy a 10-year-old car that's still looking all right. You do some checks that you'd like to do when you buy any used car, and then you run that car up to the point where it has a major fault that's going to cost more than half the price of the car to repair. If it does, you sell the car, use the money that you've got from selling that car plus the 10% of your salary to buy another car. Now, not only are you saving all these broken down vehicles from going to landfill or being crushed and being sold for scrap, you're for the money that you would have been spending. So you could spend 2 grand on a car, and it could last you 3 years without having anything go wrong, even if it's like 10 years old or so. Now, in that time, if you're spending £100 a month or £200 a month on finance, that's about, in that 3 years, that's like £7,200 that you would have spent in that time on that car. Now, the biggest expense for any new car or any car less than 3 years old is the depreciation and the VAT that you pay on that car.
Yeah.
So automatically you're paying 20% VAT on the price of the car, and the depreciation can be as high as 50% in the first 3 years. So ultimately 70% of what you spent is gone 3 years later. It also gives you the flexibility of if, for example, you've got this car and it's not really suited to your needs anymore, and it does come across a problem in a couple of years' time, you've not spent all that money over that period of time, and you can change it up. You can have the flexibility to, I've got a coupe today, which is great. I can drive fast and have a wonderful time, and oh, bugger, I got a baby on the way. I need to get myself a family car. You can do that without having to have massive debt or massive expense.
Yeah, right.
And the whole theory can be applied to not just cars, but other things as well. So another thing that it kind of works for is things like mobile phones. Now, mobile phones, people tend to have for 2 years, which is the length of their contract, and then they can upgrade. And realistically, you look at a phone today, and you look at a phone that's 2 years old. They call, they make text, they search the internet, you can install the same apps, they can do absolutely the same thing. Maybe not in as much comfort, like you'd say in the style of a car, or with the same speed, like in the style of a car, but it essentially does the same thing. Now, instead of spending, for example, £50 a month on a phone, you can spend a tenner a month on a SIM card for the same amount of data, buy a phone for 200 quid, 300 quid, which most 2-year-old phones that were flagships at the time are going to cost you. Ultimately, you've saved yourself about £1,000 over the course of 2 years for a phone that's absolutely fine, it does the job, and you're kind of saving stuff going to landfill anyway, because how many people just chuck their phone out when they're done with it?
And how many people are just completely sucked into it's the new one, it's the new iPhone, it's the new Nissan, it's the new such and such. I need to have that new thing. Do you really?
Yeah.
Do you actually need to have that new thing? Or could you just get something that was a couple of years old, that's still in circulation, the updates still work, and in turn save yourself money, save the planet money, because that's already in production? I mean, it's just a no-brainer, is it? But people are so attached to that. Oh, it's the new one. I need to get the new one because, you know, Sally's going to have the new one. And if Sally's got the new one and I've got the new one, then I'm going to look stupid like an idiot because, you know, I really need that new one. And John's going to have the new car and, yeah.
Keeping up with the Joneses.
Literally, keeping up with Joneses, isn't it? Yeah.
So there's an interesting theory on that as well, actually. So as evolutionary creatures, obviously we've grown up over millennia or millions of years, grown up as humans. Now, it's safe to say that back in the day, we weren't the top of the food chain. We were very much eaten by lions, tigers, bears, all that fun stuff. and then one day we evolved, and we are now not hunted in the same way that we once were. Now, through the time of when we were sort of lower down on the food chain, we'd always have to improve our own environment to make sure that we were safe and we were secure and we weren't going to get eaten by a bear. Now that we've evolved out of that, we still feel like we need to improve our environment in every step of the way. It's why people feel like they never have a big enough house, or feel like they never have a nice enough car, or they don't have the best tech. They feel like they still need to constantly grow on that because they need to improve their own environment for their own safety and security, and that can come down to an evolutionary level. It's also one of the reasons why people struggle to feel contentment at times, because they feel like they need to be upgrading, they need to be going for the better thing, they need to be striving for more. Well, ultimately, a good proportion of the population could be quite happy, quite content, and continue to live the rest of their life within their current means. But due to this, either keeping up with the Joneses, this evolutionary factor, a combination of multiple things, they feel like they need to keep striving forward for bigger, better, brighter, newer. What's it? Bigger, better, wider, warmer.
I think the sun's on my side today. I got a lease of life, I feel okay. Need to call around, get them all out, jump in the car and get on our way. Cause there's love and there's strength in numbers. They can try, but they're never gonna run us down. Speakers loud, it's like we're on a come up. Fifth gear, but they're never gonna race us down. I'm alive on a high, blue skies, there's nothing better. Hands up, we're on a ride, hold tight, we're laughing together. Ooh, we'll light it up, and ooh, we can't be stopped. And oh, can't hear us coming. Oh, we take off and keep it running. Take a stop at the riverside, crack 'em open, pass around the light. Breathe it in and out, bring our guards down. Yeah, this is ours for the day and the night. Cause there's love and there's strength in numbers. They can try, but they're never gonna run us down. Speakers loud, it's like we're on a come up. Fifth gear, but they're never gonna race us down. I'm alive on a high, blue skies, there's nothing better. Hands up, we're on a ride, hold tight, we're laughing together. Ooh, we'll light it up, and ooh, we can't be stopped. And oh, you can't hear us coming. Oh, we take off and keep it running, running. We take off and keep it running.